Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Smackdown and AEW Rampage review. Smackdown tonight was from the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore, Maryland, while AEW Rampage was taped from the Blue Cross Arena in Rochester here in New York. Smackdown tonight, this was night 1 of the WWE Draft. Night 2 will take place this Monday on Raw. And WWE does the draft because when we think of it nowadays with the WWE Draft, WWE only does the draft for two things. One, they're desperate and they need to move some superstars to either show. Number two, it's to pop a rating. This is only done for ratings. So that's what we think of when they announce the WWE Draft nowadays. It's all done for ratings, and it's because they are so desperate. But for the WWE Draft, we had 4 rounds of draft picks. But SmackDown tonight as a whole was a steaming pile of shit, in my opinion. So we had Corbin versus Kevin Owens once again. Can we please end this already with Corbin and Owens? How many fucking times do we have to see the same fucking match? Nothing is different when these two go at it in the ring. We've seen it many times before. Then we had an 8-man tag. And then in the main event, it was Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair. Overall, SmackDown tonight was absolute shit. Terrible show. So, let's jump right into the review. So, SmackDown opened up tonight with Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville. They ended up coming out to announce the first round of draft picks in the 2021 WWE Draft. So Sonya Deville ended up announcing superstars coming to SmackDown or staying on SmackDown, while Adam Pearce announced superstars going to Raw and certain superstars staying on Monday Night Raw. So they ended up doing the first round of the WWE Draft. So Sonya Deville ended up announcing that SmackDown selected the Tribal Chief, Universal Champion, Roman Reigns. Not surprised there. Not surprised that Roman Reigns is staying on SmackDown, considering he is the top guy on SmackDown. So no surprise there. So Adam Pearce announced the second pick for Monday Night Raw. So, Monday Night Raw ended up picking Big E, the WWE Champion. So, Big E is staying on Raw. No surprise there also. So, Adam Pearce ended up announcing that. So, Sonya Deville then announced the third pick for SmackDown. So, SmackDown, she ended up announcing that SmackDown picked the Raw Women's Champion, Charlotte Flair. And I'm like, oh my God. It's bad enough that we got tired of Charlotte on Monday night, and now we got to see her on Friday nights now. God. And you know, with Charlotte now on SmackDown, you already know that Becky Lynch is going to Monday Night Raw. And remember when, during the 2019 draft, where you had the Street Profits and the New Day. The Street Profits were I think they were the Raw Tag Team champions, and the New Day were the SmackDown Tag Team champions. Remember when we all thought that there was going to be some sort of unification between the tag team division? Unfortunately, WWE Creative was like, no, we're not going to unificate the tag team division and just make it one title for the tag teams. So WWE ended up doing a trade. So you had the Street Profits end up giving the New Day the Raw Tag Team titles. The New Day end up giving the Street Profits the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Watch. That's going to be the same thing right here with Charlotte. And if Becky Lynch goes to Monday Night Raw, you're going to see Becky Lynch trade the SmackDown Championship, SmackDown Women's Championship to Charlotte, and Charlotte's going to be given the Raw Women's Championship to Becky Lynch. That's how I see what WWE is going to do if Becky Lynch goes to Monday Night Raw, which I already know that she's going to be going to Monday Night Raw. So if you have Charlotte on SmackDown, Becky Lynch is going to be moving over to Monday Night Raw. So that's how I see what WWE is going to do. They're going to do the same thing like they did with the Street Profits and the New Day, where just Charlotte is going to trade the Raw Women's Championship and give it to Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch is going to give the SmackDown Women's Championship to Charlotte. That's how I see that. That's how I see that going. So then Adam Pearce ended up announcing the fourth pick for Monday Night Raw. So he ended up announcing that Bianca Belair is coming over to Monday Night Raw from SmackDown. So Bianca Belair is now a part of the Monday Night Raw roster. So there you go. Those were your first picks in the WWE Draft. Roman Reigns staying on SmackDown. Big E staying on Monday Night Raw. Charlotte joined SmackDown. Bianca Belair joining Monday Night Raw. So those are your picks. Those are your picks for the first round. Bianca Belair, I can see them using her on Monday Night Raw. We'll have to see who they put her against. And all these draft picks won't go into effect until after Crown Jewel. So after Crown Jewel, the changes made in this year's draft will go into effect on October 22nd. So those were the first round picks in the WWE Draft. Then we went to Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman coming out. Roman came out, of course, did this whole shtick where he raised the Universal Championship in the air. He got pyro. So Reigns was standing tall in the ring. Reigns ended up saying, as the back of his shirt says, "We the ones," because he's number one. Reigns ended up telling the Baltimore fans to acknowledge him. So the fans were booing at Roman. And Paul Heyman ended up getting on the mic. He ended up telling Roman, "Oh, that wasn't good enough." So we had Paul Heyman bragging about how the Demon is no longer undefeated because he ran into an exorcist named Roman Reigns. Yes, now after Extreme Rules, the Demon is no longer undefeated. That was such a stupid way to put the Demon in there and have Roman defeat him. I mean, we all knew that Roman was going to win the match this past Sunday at Extreme Rules. Why did WWE put the Demon in the match with Roman when we all knew that the Demon was going to get beat? They just fed the Demon to Roman. And now the Demon is not undefeated anymore. Awful. Absolutely awful. So they fucked up the Demon right there. So Paul Heyman ended up saying, like a shark that swims around the island of relevancy, this shark only swims forward. And what this shark looks forward to is Crown Jewel, which Paul Heyman ended up saying will not be held in Suplex City. So Paul Heyman ended up assuring us that the Beast will come up against the Suplexorist, Roman Reigns. Heyman wants to say that Reigns will remain our Universal Champion, and he will smash Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel. So then Brock Lesnar ended up coming out. Brock Lesnar got a big pop from the crowd. So Lesnar ended up coming out. He got pyro. Reigns was staring Lesnar down. Paul Heyman ended up holding the Universal Championship. And we had Lesnar stalking around ringside, looking at Roman. Lesnar then got into the ring. He got right in Reigns' face. He was smiling as Reigns was staring straight ahead at him. We had the fans chanting Suplex City. So Reigns ended up decking Lesnar. They ended up started brawling. Reigns ended up dropping Lesnar with a shot to his face, sending him to one knee. And Lesnar ended up coming right back, delivered 2 German suplexes to Roman. And then the Usos, Jimmy and Jay, they end up coming out. Lesnar ended up taking both Jimmy and Jay out, throwing some German suplexes to both the Usos. So Lesnar then ended up standing tall. He was telling Roman to come back to the ring. Reigns was staring at him from ringside. Reigns came on the apron. Lesnar ended up telling him to bring it. Reigns then backed off the apron. Fans were booing Reigns. Lesnar then scooped Jimmy up. And he dropped Jimmy with the F5. Lesnar then went to Jay. He ended up dropping Jay with the F5 as well. So we had Brock Lesnar very furious. He was staring Reigns down. Reigns ended up heading to the back with Paul Heyman. And that was how the segment ended. But overall, this was a okay segment here. Brock Lesnar coming and showing a little hype for him and Roman's match at Crown Jewel in Saudi Arabia. So, a little hype there for their match. But we all know Brock Lesnar's not winning the Universal Championship at Crown Jewel. Reigns is retaining it, of course. Reigns is still going to be the Universal Champion. He's going to be the Universal Champion for a very long time. If some of you think that Brock Lesnar is going to defeat Roman at Crown Jewel, you might as well just guess again. Roman is still going to be walking out the Universal Champion in Saudi Arabia. He's going to be holding on to that title for a long while. But Brock Lesnar, like I said, he is not winning the title at Crown Jewel. Now we have Kayla Braxton. Kayla Braxton was backstage with Charlotte, which of course Charlotte was drafted to Smackdown tonight. Kayla Braxton ended up asking how Charlotte's strategy will change going into SmackDown. Charlotte ended up saying that she wants Kayla Braxton to congratulate her. And Kayla Braxton did congratulate to Charlotte. Charlotte ended up going on about how, of course, Fox drafted the most decorated woman in sports entertainment history. Okay. Charlotte ended up saying, "Long live the Queen." And she ended up shouting a woo as she walked off. And that was that. So, who cares? Charlotte's going to make SmackDown a little worse every Friday night. And then we went to Kevin Owens versus Happy Baron Corbin. Once again, a rematch. Nothing different happened in this match at the same other times that we've seen it. They just really need to end this with Owens and Corbin. This is not enjoyable. The Happy Corbin gimmick fucking sucks. With the stupid entrance theme that he has. With jackpot Las Vegas music. Last week, Riddick Moss. Yeah, Riddick Moss. You're probably saying, oh, who is this guy? Yeah, that's how irrelevant Riddick Moss is. Because WWE... But we all know Brock Lesnar's not winning the Universal Championship at Crown Jewel. Reigns is retaining it, of course. Reigns is still going to be the Universal Champion. He's going to be the Universal Champion for a very long time. If some of you think that Brock Lesnar is going to defeat Roman at Crown Jewel, you might as well just guess again. Roman is still going to be walking out the Universal Champion in Saudi Arabia. He's going to be holding on to that title for a long while. But Brock Lesnar, like I said, he is not winning the title at Crown Jewel. Now we have Kayla Braxton. Kayla Braxton was backstage with Charlotte, which of course Charlotte was drafted to SmackDown tonight. Kayla Braxton ended up asking how Charlotte's strategy will change going into SmackDown. Charlotte ended up saying that she wants Kayla Braxton to congratulate her. And Kayla Braxton did congratulate to Charlotte. Charlotte ended up going on about how, of course, Fox drafted the most decorated woman in sports entertainment history. Okay. Charlotte ended up saying, "Long live the Queen." And she ended up shouting a woo as she walked off. And that was that. So, who cares? Charlotte's going to make SmackDown a little worse every Friday night. And then we went to Kevin Owens versus Happy Baron Corbin. Once again, a rematch. Nothing different happened in this match at the same other times that we've seen it. They just really need to end this with Owens and Corbin. This is not enjoyable. The Happy Corbin gimmick fucking sucks. With the stupid entrance theme that he has. With jackpot Las Vegas music. You had Riddick Moss return last week. And you're all probably like, who? Yeah, Riddick Moss. The guy who was last featured on Monday Night Raw. And then he was off TV for God knows how long. And now he's back on TV with Corbin. So Kevin Owens ended up making his way out first. Michael Cole ended up showing the recap of what we saw last week during Corbin's Happy Talk premiere. More like shit talk, because that segment was fucking awful. I do not want to see another Happy Talk segment. It was so terrible, awful television. So we saw when Kevin Owens got double teamed by Corbin and Riddick Moss. So we saw that from last week. God, do I want to forget that. So then Corbin ended up coming out only by himself. And then when Corbin came out, he waved out his new associate, Riddick Moss, who is now being called Madcap Moss. Really. Call him Madcap Moss. Awful. So we got a pre-recorded video of Corbin introducing Moss. Corbin ended up talking about how Moss always keeps him happy by telling jokes. Moss ended up telling a joke which was absolutely fucking awful. So then we went back to the ring. The match ended up starting. We had Owens start unloading on Corbin. He was beating Corbin down in the corner. He ended up sending Corbin out to the floor. Owens ended up looking to launch himself back in from the apron. Moss ended up taking out Owens' leg. And of course, Moss and Corbin were laughing at Kevin Owens. Moss is just like, yeah, that's what they have Moss, that's what they have Mad Cat Moss or Riddick Moss, whatever the fuck you want to call him, doing on the outside. Laughing like a fucking idiot. Going, yeah, that's what they got. That's what they got for Moss. So, when SmackDown came back from the commercial, we saw Corbin was dominated on Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens ended up blocking the right from Corbin, and he ended up nailing Enziguri. Corbin ended up walking into a big boot from Owens in the corner. Owens then delivered a tornado DDT from the corner onto Corbin. He went for the cover. Corbin kicked out at 2. So, Corbin ended up blocking the stunner. He ended up rolling Kevin Owens up for a 2 count. Corbin then ended up catching Owens with the deep 6. He He went for a cover, which Owens ended up kicking out at 2. Corbin was working on Kevin Owens. Owens ended up chopping back at Corbin. They were trading strikes. Owens started unloading in the corner onto Corbin. Corbin does his usual, where he goes under the bottom rope, comes back into the ring. Owens then ended up super kicking him. And he then kicked Corbin again and sent Corbin into the corner. Owens then went for the corner cannonball. So Owens went for the cover. Corbin kicked out of it. So Kevin Owens ended up going to the top. Corbin then ended up rolling out to the floor. So Kevin Owens ended up grabbing Corbin, but Owens was distracted by Mad Cat Moss. Kevin Owens ended up turning back around, and Corbin ended up nailing the end of days on Owens on the floor. And of course, Moss going, laughing. WWE just might as well make Moss the Joker. Give him the Joker makeup, and there you go. He could be out there all the time when Corbin has a match. Yeah, I'm not kidding. That is what they got for Moss. Being with Corbin. So Corbin ended up rolling Kevin Owens back into the ring. Corbin then ended up grabbing Kevin Owens and delivered another end of days. Corbin went for the cover. And there you go. Corbin ended up winning the match. Post-match, Corbin ended up staying tall over Kevin Owens. And both Corbin and Moss laughing hysterically. I mean, this is what Corbin and Moss are reduced to. Just fucking laughing. Awful. Absolutely awful. Like I said, might as well just throw Joker makeup on Moss. And there you go. He could laugh at anything. So then we had Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce. They ended up coming out for the second round draft picks. Sonya Deville ended up reminding us that half of the roster will be drafted tonight, and the other half will be drafted this Monday on Raw. So Sonya Deville ended up announcing the first pick of the second round in the draft. The first pick of the second round is Drew McIntyre coming to SmackDown, which, not surprised there. I knew that Drew McIntyre was coming to SmackDown. So Drew McIntyre, first pick in the second round for SmackDown. So then Adam Pearce end up selecting Randy Orton and Matt Riddle, RK Bro. So RK Bro is staying on Monday Night Raw. No surprise there. So Sonya Deville ended up announcing that SmackDown ended up picking the New Day. So Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods are now on SmackDown, coming from Raw. So they're back on SmackDown in 2 years. Since they got drafted to Monday Night Raw in the 2019 draft. So they're back on SmackDown. And then Adam Pearce ended up announcing that Edge is going to Monday Night Raw. So Edge is a part of the Monday Night Raw roster in the second round picks in the draft here. So there you go. Drew McIntyre going to SmackDown. Randy Orton and Matt Riddle staying on Monday Night Raw. The New Day coming to SmackDown. And Edge going to Monday Night Raw. So those are your second round draft picks. So then we saw Kayla Braxton. Kayla Braxton was backstage with Drew McIntyre. McIntyre was talking about being proud of his accomplishments when he was on Monday Night Raw. And how he's thinking about the past and the future. He ended up recalling being the chosen one on SmackDown. He kept saying that it didn't work out. And he's always felt like he had unfinished business here. McIntyre ended up mentioning the future. He ended up pointing his sword, Angela. and he announced that he wants the Universal Championship. So they're setting up right there for Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns' next opponent after Brock Lesnar, after his match at Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel, is going to be Drew McIntyre. That's what they're setting it up for. And then we had Edge end up coming out. Edge was in the ring, and Edge ended up thanking Baltimore. He got a big pop from them. Edge ended up saying that he realized he's the only superstar who was around for the first days of SmackDown, and that he's always felt like SmackDown is his home. He ended up saying going to Raw is okay because it's a new challenge. So then he ended up bringing up Seth Rollins. Edge ended up bringing up how Rollins recently challenged him, knowing he's not 100% cleared yet. Rollins knows he would have an advantage in a match, and that Rollins also knows what kind of man he is, and knows he'd have to show up and answer the challenge. Last week, Seth Rollins ended up calling out Edge. Edge ended up replying on Twitter that he was going to be at SmackDown this week, which, of course, he was tonight. Of course, delivering this segment. Edge ended up saying that he's on his way to 100%. So Edge ended up calling Rollins out to the ring. So then we saw Rollins end up appearing on the screen. Rollins ended up talking about how Edge isn't saying what he wanted to hear. About how he is better and isn't Edge light. Or how Edge is retiring. Rollins then talked about how Edge is a liar. So he didn't believe him when he said he was coming to SmackDown. So Rollins ended up showing us where he was at. And he was at Edge's house. He was at the front door of Edge's house. Rollins then ended up knocking on the door as Edge ended up running out of the ring. And the door was unlocked. So Rollins ended up entering the house. So Rollins was calling for Beth Phoenix, of course, Edge's wife. He was like, Beth. So Rollins ended up helping himself. He was in the kitchen, and he was drinking orange juice from the carton from Edge's refrigerator. So Rollins sits down at the dining room table, puts his feet up like it's his house. Rollins then ended up spotting some artwork that was done by Edge's kids, his girls, which Rollins ended up saying the artwork from Edge's kids is awful. So Rollins was dancing around Edge's house, and Rollins ended up saying, oh, that's so cute, because his daughter's book bags, Edge's daughter's book bags, were hanging on the door. So Rollins was like, oh, that's so cute. He ended up saying that Edge is a lucky man. So Rollins then ended up walking past an office room, and he sees a photo of Edge, Beth, and their kids, which the photo was sitting on a mantle. Rollins ended up saying that Edge's daughters are gorgeous, and he ended up saying, thank God they look like Beth. So Rollins ended up taking another seat on one of Edge's chairs. He ended up talking about how luxurious it is. So Rollins then ended up grabbing a remote, and the remote turned on the fireplace. Rollins ended up saying, this is the homiest home he's ever been in his life. And that's so cozy that he could stay here all night. So Rollins then ended up tossing the apple that he had. He ended up laughing. And then we saw the camera ends up cutting backstage. Edge was on the phone with Beth. Edge ended up telling Beth to not go home and go to her brother's house because Rollins was in the house. Edge ended up saying that he's calling Daniel and David to go to the home and deal with Rollins. So then Edge ended up telling Beth that he loves her. He hung up the phone, and Pat McAfee was like, he's calling Daniel and David. Why don't he just call the police? So that was that. But really enjoyed this segment. Always love when WWE does a home invasion with their superstars. The last home invasion I remember was Triple H going to Randy Orton's house. I think that happened in 2009, where Triple H had the sledgehammer. He was just sledgehammering Orton's door. He ends up going into the house, starts chasing around Orton. That was the last home invasion that I remember WWE doing. So it's been a while since they did that. And then we went to Carmella versus Liv Morgan. Once again, another rematch, which this match did not get underway. So Carmella ended up coming out, and then Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan ended up saying that she will give Carmella another match, but tonight she will break Carmella's face. So they were trash talking, both Carmella and Liv. And then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Liv Morgan ended up hitting Carmella, which Carmella ended up getting out of the ring. Carmella then got on the mic. She ended up calling Liv a bitch, saying that is the last chance Liv Morgan will have to break her beautiful face. Carmella then called over two ladies, and they ended up putting a mask on Carmella to protect her face. So we had the fans chanting, "You look stupid," as Carmella ended up coming back into the ring. She ended up working on Liv Morgan. Carmella ended up dropping Liv Morgan down, stood over her. Carmella then removed the mask, and she was smiling, and that was that. So the match never got started. So that was that. But what a waste of time. This was a waste of fucking time. And then we had Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville back on the stage. And this was for the third round of draft picks. So we had Sonya Deville end up announcing that Happy Corbin and Mad Cat Moss are staying on SmackDown. Not surprised. So Adam Pearce ended up announcing that Monday Night Raw has selected Nikki ASH and Rhea Ripley. So they are staying on Monday Night Raw. Sonya Deville ended up announcing that Hit Row is coming to SmackDown. Yes, Hit Row from NXT. B-Fab, Ashanti Adonis, Top Dollar, AJ Francis, and Isaiah Swerve Scott. They're part of the SmackDown roster. And you know what? I feel bad for them because they're going to be buried once they get to SmackDown. They did very little in NXT. And I enjoyed the little stuff that they did down there. But the only ones that I see that have a shot and are ready are Isaiah Swerve Scott and B-Fab. Ashanti Adonis and Top Dollar. They're not that great in the ring. So Isaiah Swerve Scott and B-Fab are the only two that I can see that are ready for the main roster. But Hit Row, WWE is going to bury them. They're going to be Shit Row. Everybody's going to be calling them Shit Row because of how WWE is going to handle them. And you know what? That might come. That might come true. I may be calling Hit Row Shit Row by how Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, and anybody else on that creative team uses Hit Row on SmackDown. I already know that they're going to be buried. So Adam Pearce then ended up announcing that Keith Bearcat Lee is going to be staying on Monday Night Raw. Great. Let's just bury Keith Lee even more on that show. When is Keith Lee's contract up? Yeah. When Keith Lee's contract is up, he needs to go to AEW. He's going to be AEW bound once his contract is up. And he's going to be treated very well when he gets to AEW. So there you go. So those were your third round draft picks. Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss staying on SmackDown. Nikki ASH and Rhea Ripley staying on Raw. Hit Row coming to SmackDown. They're going to be buried, like I said. And Keith Bearcat Lee, is staying on Monday Night Raw. Let's just bury Keith Lee even more while he's on that show. It's bad off Monday Night Raw is shit anyway. So then we had the New Day and the Street Profits versus Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode, Otis, and Chad Gable. This was an 8-man tag. Match was just meh, in my opinion. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods end up coming out along with Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins. And then Dolph Ziggler, Robert Roode, Otis, and Chad Gable were already in the ring as SmackDown came back from the commercial. So they got the jobbers entrances. So Dolph Ziggler and Kofi Kingston started off the match. They were trading offense. Kofi ended up hitting a spinning elbow for a close 2 count on Dolph Ziggler. Xavier Woods ended up coming in. Him and Kofi did a double team on Dolph. They went back and forth. Chad Gable and Montez Ford ended up going at it. Ford had his ribs taped up tonight. That was shown. Ford and Chad Gable ended up trading holds. Gable ended up drop kicking Ford. Started grounding on him. Later on in the match, Dawkins ended up delivering a spin neckbreaker to Roode. And he went for the cover. And Otis ended up breaking up the count. Otis ended up leveling Xavier Woods. Dawkins ended up sending Otis out to the floor. And Montez Ford ended up running the ropes. He leapt onto Otis. At the end of the match, we had Kofi and Xavier end up double teaming on Roode. And there you go. The New Day and the Street Profits ended up winning the match. Overall, just a very meh 8-man tag, in my opinion. And so then we went back to Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce for the 4th round draft picks. This was the final of night 1 here. So Sonya Deville ended up announcing the first pick in the 4th round for SmackDown. And Sonya Deville wasn't happy because the pick was Naomi. So Naomi is staying on SmackDown. So Adam Pearce then ended up selecting Rey Mysterio and Dominic to come over to Monday Night Raw. So Rey and Dominic are going to Monday Night Raw. Sonya Deville then announced Jeff Hardy is coming over to SmackDown. So I can see that, Jeff Hardy benefiting good on SmackDown if they use him properly. So Jeff Hardy's on SmackDown. And then Adam Pearce ended up announcing that Austin Theory from NXT is going to be on Monday Night Raw. Which, rest in peace, Austin Theory's career, because how I see WWE booking Austin Theory on Monday Night Raw, Austin Theory is going to be one of those guys who's going to be chasing after the 24/7 title. Mark my words. That's what Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard are going to see in Austin Theory. They're going to make him run around chasing after the 24/7 title. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And of course, Austin Theory was a part of The Way. It was him and Indy Hartwell, Candice LeRae, Johnny Gargano. But looks like The Way is breaking up because Indy Hartwell in that storyline in NXT, she ended up marrying Dexter Lumis. Austin Theory is going to Monday Night Raw. And Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae, they're, in the storyline, watching Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis. But they're expecting their first baby, Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. It's going to be a boy, so you're seeing, a little bit of breakup of the way, which I liked that group in NXT with them. Gargano, Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, and Austin Theory. But yeah, Austin Theory, like I said, he's going to be one of the guys chasing after the 24/7 title. So that's how I see them using Austin Theory. So those were your 4th round draft picks in the final of night 1. And then we had Kayla Braxton backstage. Kayla Braxton was backstage with Jeff Hardy. And Jeff Hardy was going to speak. And Brock Lesnar ended up walking up. So Jeff Hardy ended up backing away. He ended up leaving. Brock Lesnar ended up saying hi to Kayla. And he ended up asking if we're live. So Brock Lesnar then took the mic as Kayla Braxton ended up leaving. Brock Lesnar ended up having a public announcement to share. Brock Lesnar ended up thanking his good friend Paul Heyman. He ended up saying that he is now a free agent, all because of Paul Heyman. And due to that, Brock Lesnar ended up saying that he gets to do what he wants to do, what Brock Lesnar wants to do. So Brock Lesnar dropped the mic, and that was that. So Brock Lesnar is going to be working on his own and doing what he wants. So he doesn't have Paul Heyman there anymore as a mouthpiece. So let's see what Brock Lesnar could do, by himself. So then we saw the Bloodline sitting backstage. They were watching Brock Lesnar's segment. Reigns ended up asking Paul Heyman if he's really good friends with Brock Lesnar. Reigns then asked Paul Heyman if he and Paul Heyman are friends. Heyman ended up saying yes. So Reigns then said if they are friends, then Paul Heyman will look out for him and his family. So Reigns then ended up asking why his cousins weren't drafted to Smackdown. Paul Heyman ended up saying to Roman that it could still happen on Monday Night Raw, calling it a strategy. Paul Heyman ended up saying that he's a wise man. So Reigns then ended up laughing. He ended up yelling at Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman was pleading with Roman. Reigns ended up saying, okay then, let's follow the strategy and stick to the plan. So Reigns ended up wanting Paul Heyman to go to Monday Night Raw this Monday and make sure that the Usos are drafted to SmackDown. So Reigns was like to Paul Heyman, do you understand? Paul Heyman ended up saying, yes, my tribal chief. And then he ended up thanking Reigns. So Reigns ended up saying that he wants the Usos to go with Paul Heyman to Raw and make it very clear that they are to be drafted to SmackDown. He ended up saying that if they're not, he's going to leave Paul Heyman for dead at Monday Night Raw. So that was that. Then we had the main event. Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks. And we had Bianca end up making her way out. Of course, this was a rematch of the match that they had at WrestleMania this year. So we had Sasha end up coming out next. Sasha ended up facing off with Bianca. And out came Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch ended up coming out. She was on commentary for the match. So we had the match end up starting. Both Bianca and Sasha end up sizing each other up. They locked up. Bianca ended up taking Sasha into the corner. Banks ended up taking control of the match and locked in a headlock on Bianca. Both of them end up running the ropes, and Sasha ended up blocking the reversal. She then took Bianca down with a head scissors. Sasha ended up catching Bianca in the corner with a monkey flip, but Bianca ended up landing on her feet. Bianca ended up leveling Sasha with a shoulder, and Bianca ended up standing tall over Sasha. Bianca then ended up running Sasha from corner to corner. She was taunting at Sasha. Bianca then scooped Sasha for a suplex and started talking trash to her. Sasha ended up countering and got caught in midair by Bianca. So Bianca ended up pressing Sasha high in the air. She ended up dropping Sasha on the mat. So Bianca was showing off. Sasha ended up countering in the corner. She ended up sending Bianca into the turnbuckles. And so they were just going back and forth, both Sasha and Bianca. Sasha ended up landing on her feet from Bianca trying to do the KOD attempt. So Bianca ended up coming right back. She ended up running through Sasha with a big shoulder, which sent Sasha out to the floor. So then SmackDown went to commercial. Then when SmackDown came back from the commercial, Bianca ended up hitting Sasha with a shoulder thrust in the corner. We had Bianca end up taking Sasha up for a suplex, but Sasha ended up sending her down to the mat, ended up hitting the Meteora, which she went for the cover, which Sasha ended up kicking out at 2. Sasha then got back up, started unloading on Bianca in the corner. So they were going back and forth. So we had, at the end of the match, Bianca ended up rolling Sasha back into the ring. She stopped to yell at Becky, who was at ringside on commentary. Bianca then ended up going back in the ring, and Becky ended up holding Bianca's hair down, preventing her from moving, and allowed Sasha to take advantage of the match. Sasha ended up rolling Bianca up, and there you go. Sasha ended up winning the match. Post-match, Charlotte immediately ended up coming out of nowhere, ended up taking out both Sasha and Bianca. Charlotte then stood tall. Charlotte then raised the Raw Women's Championship in the air. She ended up staring out as Becky Lynch ended up raising the SmackDown Women's Championship in the air. And, you know, Charlotte was like that to Becky. So that was how SmackDown went off the air. Overall, awful SmackDown tonight. Now moving on to AEW Rampage, which this was taped from the Blue Cross Arena in Rochester, New York. Rampage tonight was an enjoyable show. We had Bryan Danielson versus Nick Jackson, Jade Cargill versus Thunderosa and Nyla Rose. And in the main event, it was the hair versus hair match, Orange Cassidy versus Jack Evans. So Rampage opened up tonight with Bryan Danielson versus Nick Jackson. Of course, we had Nick Jackson end up coming out along with his brother Matt and Brandon Cutler. And this was a good match here. This was an enjoyable match. So we had Bryan end up chasing Nick Jackson around the ring. They end up locking up as they got back to the ring. Nick Jackson ended up shoving Bryan off, ended up turning it into a side headlock. Nick ended up hitting the ropes, ended up landing a shoulder tackle. And we had Nick end up heading out to the outside. He ended up spraying himself. Bryan ended up following him to the outside and delivered a nice suicide dive to Nick Jackson. So we went back to the ring. Bryan ended up soaring down, delivered a shotgun missile dropkick to Nick Jackson. He then put Nick in a brutal surfboard and transformed it into a dragon sleeper, which I'm like, Nick Jackson is very flexible if his arm, bent back so much like that, is what we saw at this point in the match. So we had Nick Jackson end up turning it around, deliver a lariat to Bryan. Bryan ended up catching Nick once he came off with a springboard maneuver, and he applied an armbar. Bryan ended up smashing Nick Jackson's chest before he ended up dropping him with a suplex. So Bryan went for the cover. Nick Jackson ended up kicking out. So there was a point in the match where we had Bryan and Nick Jackson on the apron. Bryan end up ducking, and Nick Jackson ended up taking out Brandon Cutler, which was hilarious. So we had, at the end of the match, we had Bryan end up delivering a bridge tiger suplex. Nick Jackson ended up finding out, only to get put in the cow mutilation by Bryan. So Nick Jackson ended up tapping out. So Bryan ended up winning the match. Post-match, we had Kenny Omega and Adam Cole end up coming out. And then Christian, Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy end up coming out to prevent an attack on Bryan Danielson. So both of the groups end up brawling. We had Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy clearing out the ring. And Bryan Danielson clearing out the ring also. Jungle Boy ended up locking Adam Cole in the snare trap. Bryan ended up encouraging Kenny Omega to get back into the ring because right when these teams started brawling, Kenny Omega was the only one to retreat out of the ring. So Bryan ended up encouraging Omega to get back into the ring. Omega did get back into the ring. And Bryan ended up putting Omega in the label lock. And Adam Cole and Omega were staring at each other while they were both in a submission. And pretty much that was basically that. But overall, this was an enjoyable match between Bryan Danielson and Nick Jackson. Both these guys worked really well in the match. And it was entertaining. So then we saw Powerhouse Hobbs and Hook. Hobbs ended up saying that Ricky Starks has a special message for Brian Cage. So Ricky Starks ended up cutting a vignette. He was describing how he won't back down from a fight against Brian Cage. So we're going to be seeing a rematch with them. Ricky Starks versus Brian Cage. So that's going to be coming soon. And then Ricky Starks was on commentary before we had the second match. And we saw after that CM Punk had a taped video. CM Punk ended up calling himself a 5-tool player. Punk ended up saying that since he arrived in AEW, he's been untouchable. He ended up saying that he wants the best that this company can give him. Punk ended up saying that he would rather choke on facing the bigger guys than stabilize himself on mediocrity. So it was a decent, tape video from Punk. And then we had Jade Cargill versus Nyla Rose versus Thunderosa. Jade Cargill ended up coming out, of course, along with Mark Sterling. Nyla Rose came out, of course, with Vicky Guerrero. This was an okay women's match here. Thunderosa carried pretty much mostly the match. So Thunderosa and Jade Cargill went at it after the bell rang. Thunderosa ended up getting caught off the ropes by Nyla Rose. Nyla ended up slamming Thunderosa on the mat. Nyla was looking to go for the cover, but Thunderosa ended up kicking out. So Nyla and Jade Cargill end up exchanging blows. Cargill ended up sending Nyla out of the ring with a pump kick. Thunderosa ended up sneaking up to the top rope. She delivered a missile drop kick on Jade Cargill. So Rampage went to commercial after that. Then when Rampage came back, Jade Cargill ended up bringing in a garbage can. Thunderosa ended up hitting a drop kick on Jade Cargill before she ended up using the garbage can. So Thunderosa covered Jade Cargill, which Nyla Rose then broke it up. Thunderosa ended up sending Nyla into Jade Cargill. Cargill ended up dumping Nyla with a spine buster, a nice looking spine buster. So Thunderosa ended up going for the pin on Nyla Rose, which Cargill ended up breaking it up. So Nyla and Rosa were hanging on the apron. there was a table that was set up on the outside. Thunderosa ended up powerbombing Nyla Rose through the table, which was pretty cool. So Thunderosa ended up coming back into the ring, and she got hit with some chair shots from Jade Cargill. So Thunderosa was laid out. Jade Cargill went for the cover, and there you go. Jade Cargill ended up winning the match. You know, more of them giving Jade Cargill a big push. And I said in my Dynamite review that my prediction for this match, Jade Cargill was going to come out, win the match. Look what happened. I was right. You know, AEW still building up Jade Cargill. Little or no time, she is going to be the new AEW Women's World Champion. That's what they're setting it up for. And then we had Malachi Black. Malachi Black looked like he was coming down from some stairs. He kept saying that he enjoys the torture that he put through the Nightmare family. And his reign of terror in AEW is far from over. So that was what Malachi Black had to say. And then we had a look back at the win that Sammy Guevara had on Dynamite on Wednesday, where he defeated Miro and became the new TNT champion. And Sammy Guevara went on social media, and he kept saying that he wants to have a match with Bobby Fish this Wednesday on Dynamite. Yes, that Bobby Fish, former member of the Undisputed Era. So that would be an awesome match right there. Sammy Guevara versus Bobby Fish. That would be awesome. So then they announced 4 of the 6 participants who will be competing in the Casino Ladder match this Wednesday on Dynamite. So the 4 entrants that were announced are Jon Moxley, Pac, Lance Archer, and Andrade El Idolo. And the other 2 athletes will be announced later on in the night. So, and then one other person is the Joker. So the Joker will be the mystery opponent, or the mystery guy in the match. And then we had Mark Henry. Mark Henry is speaking to Orange Cassidy and Jack Evans. Of course, they were split screen. Matt Hardy ended up promising that Orange Cassidy will come out this bout with no hair. So Orange Cassidy was confused about what this match is. Mark Henry ended up reminding Orange Cassidy what's at stake. And then Orange Cassidy ended up replying, "I guess I better not lose then." So that was that. Then we went to the main event, which was the hair versus hair match, Orange Cassidy versus Jack Evans. Jack Evans, of course, came out along with Matt Hardy, which originally this was going to be Orange Cassidy versus Matt Hardy, but Matt Hardy ended up putting Jack Evans into the match. So this was a pretty decent match here. Matt Hardy ended up storming into the ring, and Orange Cassidy wasn't sure what this was all about with this hair versus hair match. So Orange Cassidy turned around and he got attacked by Jack Evans. Orange Cassidy ended up getting back up, starts hitting his kicks to Jack Evans. He was looking to go for a backslide, but Jack Evans ended up getting out, kicking out at 2. Orange Cassidy ended up swinging away at Jack Evans, round and round by Jack Evans' hair. Matt Hardy ended up dragging Orange Cassidy out of the ring, ended up delivering a slap to Cassidy. Jack Evans was behind Orange Cassidy, delivered a corkscrew from off the apron, and then a 450 onto Orange Cassidy. So we had Orange Cassidy end up diving on both Matt Hardy and Jack Evans later on. So Orange Cassidy ended up going up to the top, delivered a crossbody onto Jack Evans, went for the cover. Evans ended up kicking out at 2. So Evans ended up getting back up. He delivered a Northern Lights suplex, which he followed up with a Michinoku driver and a corkscrew moonsault for a near fall on Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy ended up delivering the DDT on Jack Evans and also a diving DDT. Matt Hardy was in panic mode here, and he brought out the Butcher, the Blade, and the Bunny, and of course Private Party and the rest of the Hardy family office. And then Chuck Taylor, Wheeler Yuta, Chris Statlander, the alien Chris Statlander, and the Dark Order. They end up coming out to back up Orange Cassidy. So while that was happening outside the ring, Orange Cassidy ended up knocking Jack Evans with a orange punch. And Orange Cassidy went for the cover. And there you go. Orange Cassidy ended up winning the match. So Jack Evans had to get his hair shaved off. So post-match, Wheeler Yuta and Chuck Taylor, Chucky T, were dressed in barber uniforms. Orange Cassidy had scissors in hands. And the Dark Order, Orange Cassidy, Wheeler Yuta, Chris Statlander, and Chucky T were surrounding -1, Brody Lee Jr. with a hug as, they were cutting off Jack Evans' hair. And the two other participants in the Casino Ladder match were announced. So Orange Cassidy and Matt Hardy were added to the Casino Ladder match. And of course, the Joker will be added. And we'll find out who the Joker is on Dynamite this Wednesday. But overall, that was Rampage tonight. Decent show, really enjoyable show. It was better than SmackDown, of course, in my opinion. But anyways, that's it for my review of SmackDown and AEW Rampage. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all later.